we're asking younger generation to keep that in mind, to create your spaces, the work that is involved, and maybe if you want a space to stay alive, become more involved and see how you can carry it on when the time comes.
Hello, my LGBTQs, and welcome back to another episode of A Jaded Gay. I'm Rob Lovelace, and today I am a jaded gay because the street saga continues. If you've listened to the past episodes, you know that back over the spring and early summer, there were issues with my street where the city was coming in to just replace water lines, but they didn't really do a great job of that. So instead of actually doing a full street and sidewalk restoration like they did with the streets surrounding my house, instead they just kind of did patchwork, broke things, and made it a lot worse. And as if that wasn't infuriating enough, they're back now. So at the end of my street, where the cross street is, they've started digging up to put in a new water line there. And along the way, they've marked up my street because they said that they may have to dig at the bottom and they're not sure how far up they'll have to go, even though my street is marked all the way up to the halfway point of my street. And it's a never-ending break. I mean, they're starting to do work at 6:30 in the morning. My walls are shaking. They even turned off the water again without telling us. So it's just been a nightmare. Anyway, from organizations that are causing cracks to organizations that are actually giving back, today I am very excited to have two very special guests join us today to talk all about queer bookstores. You know, in past episodes, we've talked about the importance of queer representation in literature, as well as building community and finding our chosen family. And prior to the digital age, queer bookstores were a major hub for the LGBTQ plus community, and they still exist today, which is why it's really important that we support, preserve, and protect them. So we will be diving into all of that. But first, you know the drill, tarot time. So the card for this episode is the King of Cups. As you'll remember, Cups is tied to the element of water. It's feminine energy, so it's asking us to meditate and reflect. And Cups is representative of our emotions, and you can think of it flowing freely like water. Now, while Cups is a feminine energy, the King represents masculine energy. So we really have a balance of the two energies, which represents taking time to reflect and also taking action. The King is also the 14th card in the suit, so we add double digits together and get 5, which is tied to change, instability, and loss. And sometimes 5 is referred to as the conflict card. But pulling the King of Cups represents someone who exudes emotional stability and empathy, which I think really ties into the themes of both the feminine and masculine energies. You know, it's like the perfect balance between head and heart. And this card appears to us when we've gained control of our feelings, meaning we allow ourselves to feel the feels, but we don't let them get the best of us. We know how to process them in a healthy way and use them to take strategic action forward to achieve our goals while also ensuring those around us remain engaged along the way. And with that in mind, I'm very excited to welcome today's guests. They are not only partners in life, but business partners as well, and co-owners of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. Please welcome Greg Newton and Donnie Jochum. Hi guys, how are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Doing well.
Doing well, thanks. Just, a hot day here in Philadelphia, so trying to stay cool inside in the air conditioning. I'm sure you can relate in New York City. I know it's been a heat wave this summer.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
it feels like it's been hotter than normal.
Yeah, this summer, it's just been a weird one. I've been kind of not doing my typical summer activities and just staying in, getting a lot done. So I don't want to wish it away, but I am looking forward to the fall because this year I just feel summer's not it for me.
Yeah, it's been a hot one, that's for sure.
Well, one of the nice things about it being hot out and staying inside the air conditioning is it gives you time to cozy up with a book and hopefully a queer book, which I'm very excited ties in nicely to our topic today about the importance of queer spaces and in particular queer bookstores. So I'm very excited to dive right into this with you both. Beforehand, though, I'd like to introduce you to both listeners. Can you please tell them your names, pronouns, background, career, all that fun stuff?
Sure. I'm Greg Newton, pronouns he, him. My background, let's see, where to begin? I've been in New York for almost 34 years. Before doing the Bureau, I was pursuing a PhD in art history at the CUNY City University of New York Graduate Center. And I was teaching at Parsons School of Design, teaching art history and writing. So that's my background.
And I'm Donnie Jochum, he, him. And I've been in New York since 2000 when I moved here from New Orleans. Um, Literature degree from the University of New Orleans, deep retail background, so familiar with the retail business, music and bookstore, amongst other things. And, just living in New York City and exploring it and connecting with the community. We'll tell you the story of how we started or when we came up with the idea, but all of those things sort of connected at this one moment in time.
And today, are you both jaded or non-jaded gays, and why?
I'm non-jaded, I would say. Um, I feel like it's such a messy, fucked up world. But I try to stay clear and not get crushed by all of the sadness and madness, and just remind myself I'm okay. I'm doing okay. And I'm gonna do my best to help others be okay. And not lose my mind. How's
Yeah.
that for an answer?
It's good. We definitely need that in a very jaded world. It's always good to find ways to be non-jaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I don't know, I was thinking about this earlier, and I tend to lean to not jaded because I try to cling on to the signals of hope and creativity and connection and community, and I'm constantly reminded of how people are making it through times like these times. So I have that element of hopefulness, but I think if I look back across my life in general, there are components that are jaded in terms of connection to particularly the gay male community and what we see as our portrayals and our focuses and our emphasis and just our culture in general that I've never really always connected with in my life. So I'm mostly not, but there are sometimes moments of
I feel that's inevitable, but it seems like you both are mostly non-jaded, which I'm really glad we're bringing that energy today. I could definitely use it. So I appreciate having two non-jaded gays in the house.
Excellent.
Well, with that in mind, I'd like to get, right into it. Obviously, today we're talking about queer bookstores. So can you tell us about the Borough of General Services Queer Division?
Yeah. So we came up with the idea, or we started fantasizing about opening a queer bookstore in September 2011. We had met in June 2011, so we always joke that we got pregnant quickly, because it was only a couple months later that we were walking where a different light used to be.
So for anyone in New York City, West 19th Street, around 7th Avenue.
Yeah, that was a queer bookstore that was there for years and that closed in 2002, I want to say.
Maybe.
So we started thinking about this. Like, when did that close? Wait a minute. When did Oscar Wilde Memorial Bookshop close? That closed in 2008, I believe.
Yep.
And then we were saying, like, oh my God, that's embarrassing. New York doesn't have a queer bookstore. What the fuck?
Yeah, I got very angry about the idea because I had been to both of those locations prior to their closing, and just the thought of where is our space, and with the developments in the industry with both shopping online but also big box retail, etc., combination of factors, it just very angry about it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, we started fantasizing about it. And I had found out in July 2011 that the 2011-2012 academic year was going to be my last at Parsons. And that had been a lengthy, difficult process that left me feeling a bit jaded about academia, deeply disappointed by academia, and feeling like there wasn't really a way for me to continue.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided not to finish my PhD, even though I got all the way to the writing stage. So I did all my coursework, passed all my exams, got my topic approved, started researching and writing, and then was like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
And then we just got more and more serious about it and started interviewing bookstore owners, doing lots of research, talking to anyone who would talk to us about this and get their feedback.
Yeah, it was a conversation topic we started having with friends and roommates of just, well, what if we did this? A big what if, and what would it look like? And how could we make it happen? And the fantasy increasingly became well, what does it take? Let's research that. And then we actually wrote a business plan. I mean, that's the hardest part of starting any business is getting a business plan and then going to workshops and connecting with organizations like
American Booksellers Association.
yeah, and just understanding and understanding retail business 101, right? Down to the foundation. And then as we started telling friends about it, we explored how do we get out to the marketplace, and that brought us to Pride that year, and a whole group of
2012.
A whole group of friends sort of came together to help us canvass the street fair, collecting email addresses and telling people, passing out tote bags for email addresses. And we had T-shirts printed saying, Bureau of General Services Square Division. And the back said, coming soon, bookstore and cafe in New York City.
Yeah.
So we did all this before we actually even had a space or an idea of what we were going to, like how we were going to get that space.
Obviously, the cafe part never happened, but initially we thought that would be what would make the money, because books it's really hard to make it just on books.
Yeah.
Especially if you're a so-called niche bookstore, not a general bookstore. It's just very difficult. So we thought correctly that we needed more sources of income, but we never had the capital and the resources to make that part happen.
Hey, quick question for you. Are you someone who wants to be fit, healthy, and happy? And what if I told you could get your dream body by simply just listening to a podcast? I'm Josh.
And I'm KG, and we're the hosts of the Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast.
Listen, we get it. Fitness isn't easy. Carbs, no carbs.
Just stop, okay? It doesn't have to be that complicated. And that's why we made this podcast. We get straight to the facts so you can become your best you.
So the way to check us out is click the link in the show notes or search Fit, Healthy, and Happy podcast on any of the major podcast platforms. We'll see you soon.
So, how did your experiences as queer people inspire the mission behind the Bureau?
I think, both of us, even though we are gay men, never really connected with gay male culture, or I should say, felt some distance from it. We identified with some aspects, to be sure, but there was a lot that made us feel like, I don't know, sometimes these aren't my people. When I moved to the city in the 90s, gay male culture was very like muscle clone. And I'm just like, I can work out until forever. I will never be that person. And I also don't want to be that person. I mean, it's not my scene, I'm more of an intellectual. I like to talk about topics in depth. I like to get into distinctions. And I'm very, I'm political and, it's complicated, I guess is what I'm saying. Our relationship to gay male culture in particular is kind of complicated.
And I think for myself, growing up in New Orleans, an incredibly much more inclusive culture, flavors and mixtures and opinions and openness and inclusion, I felt like I wanted to recreate something like that around a passion point, which for me, literature and books and education and information, sharing of knowledge, sort of connected for me, this idea. I mean, if I had done this when I was younger, I probably would have opened a music store, but music stores went the way of dinosaurs as well, right? They've had a niche resurgence, but bookstores also, they are still hubs of community engagement and sharing thoughts and ideas. And I think for me in New Orleans and having that let's bring people together attitude, I brought that. That was interesting to me. And how could we do that with a bookstore?
And were there any unique challenges you encountered when establishing the Bureau?
Well, neither of us had started a business. So that's a challenge. Coming from a background in art history, as you might imagine, I'm not a very business minded person. Donnie has a little more experience with that, handling operations for big stores like Virgin.
Yep.
So he had some more business experience. Um, the main challenges were just the challenges facing queer bookstores, especially, but even all indie bookstores. The big box bookstores had come in the 90s, and that resulted in so many closings. Then you had the internet taking off and online sales. Then you had ebooks. I mean, it was just like one punch after another. And for a niche bookstore, like a queer bookstore, all of that is just like 10 times harder.
Yeah.
So those were very real big challenges. And rent in New York is crazy. Every square foot is paid for. That's just a huge challenge. And it was a huge challenge, especially in the beginning.
And I think some of the systems in place in the book industry are built and designed for a big box BNN, right? Their systems, their inventory management. So we really had to do research and dig in to find out what titles. We know what we know, but we don't know everything. And doing searches and research around the newest books and all these new genres that are now out and the subcategorization of some titles, that in itself, I think for a smaller business with limited resources, without an inventory system that supports that kind of business model, definitely detrimental. So we spend a lot of time with the help of our volunteers, just simply what are the new titles? Because you can go on and do Google searches and there are all kinds of recommendations and all kinds of blogs, but you have to have a business judgment. Will this fit with our space? Is this the right title? Are these the titles?
And we also learned about so many independent queer presses closing. Like Allison Books had been a major queer publisher and they had closed. Serpent's Tail was another one.
High Risk
Books.
Yeah.
So that was also, we just saw how the publishing industry, the book industry had been totally turned upside down. Not that that's all bad. Many industries need shaking up. But yeah, we just saw the challenges facing independent publishers, queer publishers especially, as well as queer bookstores. So we knew we were getting into difficult terrain, definitely.
And I would say that maybe another unique challenge is we didn't have the funding or the financial. So we borrowed against my 401k to start the capital funding to do a pop-up experience that was a limited time, limited run.
Yeah, I think we had the fantasy that some rich gays would swoop in and save us, and they never did.
So, we still don't take an income on the store.
Yeah, it's all volunteer, including us.
So I think So we've had some unique moments where we're like, how will we do this? How will this work? What can we do? And so endless list of people that have helped along the way, been part of the experience and continue to be, could not have done it just the two of us. Absolutely never, no way.
Yeah.
Well, if there's any rich gays listening, reach out to Greg and Donnie. I'll put their information in the show notes.
Yes. We'll tell you how to donate in a bit.
But in all seriousness, obviously there were a lot of risks involved with setting up the Bureau, but I'm glad you persevered and took them because it seems to have really paid off. It's a great community hub. I was there last summer. I'd learned about it through Amin Ghaziani. He was having a book event there for Long Live Queer Nightlife. So I got to take the train from Philly in just for the day, but it was a great space, a great selection of books. I actually purchased Swole while I was there. It's a year later and I'm still only 30 pages into it, not for lack of interest. It's just grad school's been consuming my life, so I haven't had as much reading time. But like I said, it's really a great community hub. So with that in mind, can you tell us a little bit more about the resources you provide to the LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is just space. We always say the main resource we offer people is space. A space to explore queer culture for free. You can walk in, anyone can walk in for free and check out our exhibitions. We always have changing art exhibitions, or sometimes activist materials, sometimes a combination of art and activist materials. So yeah, people can come in for free and check out the exhibitions, the books, the publications. They can chat with us. They can chat with other people. They can come to events, which are also free. And, we pass a bag for donations, but it's up to people whether or not they do that. So that's our main thing, is offering this space for connection with queer culture and other queer people for free. Of course, we want people to donate. We want people to buy books, and that helps us continue. But it is important to us that there's not that barrier, that you have access to it no matter what. Even if you're unable to donate or buy a book, you can still come in, you can still connect to the culture, you can still connect to people.
And I think something that a couple of things we hear quite frequently. I don't know if I would be able to sell my book if I couldn't sell it here. So we do consignment. We have to select because we don't have enough space to carry everything. So we do have to sort of figure out, okay, will this fit? How will this do? We also hear, the most recent event connected to our current exhibition. It was publicly shared. Slava Mogutin, curator, shared with the audience that, an exhibition like this, with this kind of photography, with this subject matter, we would not be able to show this anyplace else. No gallery would take a show like this. So I think that's a big signal, is that we are open, we try to be welcoming, we want it to be hospitable, and we want everyone to feel like they can find themselves and explore, and feel that randomness of discovery in a bookstore type space. But we feel very proud that we can help serve our community by having consignment that's locally created, product that's locally made, whether it's art or literature, a zine. We have magazines and works from overseas, not just domestic, right? So I think that's also the service of, along the spaces of, it's a space. We're also a channel for
culture,
sharing works of art.
Yeah, it's a hub.
And literature.
Yeah.
And you touched upon this a little bit in your answer, but I do want to dive a little bit deeper. What role do you see the Bureau playing in building community for queer people?
So in addition to just serving as this space for connection, it's a space we host often workshops. We've hosted courses, some of which have fees, but usually there's some kind of scholarship option. So it's not exclusively set off by money. We've done film screenings, performances of all kinds. So it really is, we host things that are anything under the queer cultural umbrella. Yeah. So it's a place to connect with all of that. It's a place that for people to connect that isn't a bar, which is really important. Bars have played an important role for queer culture, to be sure. Nightlife is really important. But there are a lot of people who want to be in a space where there isn't alcohol being served. If they don't drink, or if they are in recovery, they want to be in a space where they don't feel pressured to drink, where alcohol isn't being served. I think that's a big deal for a lot of people. It's just a different kind of space than a nightlife space. Although our early days were kind of boozy.
You're on the Lower East Side. We're on the Lower East Side, and a pop-up shared gallery space. So Strange Loop Gallery really it was pivotal in providing us the opportunity to try this out. So
yeah, we started out as a pop-up in Strange Loop Gallery, owned by the fashion designer Claire Fleury.
And Cash Exum photographer.
Yeah.
You can find both of them on Instagram. Incredible artists. And
the gallery closed, but yeah, they enabled us to get started.
Yeah, 3 months turned into 9 months, and it really helped to, I mean, we really only intended this to be 3 months, and it became 9 months, and it was such an incredible partnership and friendship, and that we met our core group of New Yorkers through Strange Loop Gallery.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, gifted beyond gifted beyond gifted, that to this day we have friendships and relationships from that moment in time.
Yeah.
And I think that was that has been my favorite moment of the Bureau life. Because we were so connected at the street level to people like us with similar interests, and we were able to experiment in a way that felt really exciting. It still feels exciting, but it's a different level. It's a different experimentation, if you will. So, I think that part of what I wanted to share with, what else, I mean, we've hosted collage parties so people could come and just gather and be creative and use their hands and tell stories. We partnered years and years and years ago with Dre Campbell of Tell Queers on Instagram. That's queers with a Z. And we're still co-hosting, supporting Dre and a monthly storytelling experience where 3 to 4 storytellers are given a topic to come prepared and share a queer story. And I think that is another service of owning our narrative. It's really important. And again, I don't want to knock the services of a big box retailer or a general bookstore, but I can't continue to go into a Barnes and Noble type environment and see one shelf of LGBTQ, whatever books have been chosen to be on the shelf. I mean, you can't even go through the general fiction and find books by Edmund White unless it's a boy's own story, right? One title. And sometimes you can't even find some James Baldwin books, right? So I think that one of our services was our narrative, our space, our knowledge, and share it.
And we got some good advice before we started from the artist A.A. Bronson, Canadian artist. He was part of the trio called General Idea. And a friend of ours introduced us to him, and he said, my main piece of advice is say yes more than you say no. And that really stuck with us. We try to say yes as much as possible.
Yep.
So that, people come to us and we can say, yes, yeah, we'll take your book on consignment or your zine on consignment. We'll put that out there on the shelves and
let's see how it does.
Yeah. So I think that is a major service that we provide that we're really proud of.
And to your point, queer bookstores really do provide a unique source of community. Like you said, traditionally, bars and gyms were main queer hubs. And while there are definitely pros and cons to those areas, and they do build community, they can be very intimidating spaces as well. So there's something about being in a queer bookstore where it feels a lot safer. But then too, beyond that, way before we had commercially queer books or commercially queer films, there were these dedicated spaces where gay men, queer people could see themselves through characters, through shared stories, and really get that sense of representation they so badly needed before Hollywood was ready to accept us as kind of a mainstream commodity. And I think that is something that younger generations really don't understand, that just because how we consume media in general, whether it's books, movies, TV, has changed so much. For me, something that really stands out is I remember way back when in my early 20s, when Grindr was my main source of community building, I was watching Will and Grace for like the first time all the way through. And there was an episode where there was a queer bookstore that was closing, and Will was really passionate about keeping it up and running. And while it's sad to see, a queer bookstore close, in that storyline, I thought to myself, but why is he so impassioned? Like, he was talking about the connection of how important it was to him. And I just couldn't make that connection for myself, just because I was not somebody who grew up as an adult in the 90s, gay, trying to find a source of community or representation. It looked very different for me in the 2000s. So I think as we continue to go down that way, there has been more of that disconnect between younger generations and the importance of queer hubs. So long-winded rant there, but that was basically my way to transition to this next question. In recent years, we've seen some queer spaces, including queer bookstores, closing. So beyond what I just said, are there any additional reasons you think that's happening?
I mean, yeah, obviously the internet has just changed everything, and smartphones have changed everything. There's so many ways to connect, which is great. I mean, especially during COVID, we saw how important those tools were when we couldn't gather in person. But obviously, we feel it's so important to be able to gather in person, to connect in person, face to face, unmediated. Nobody's filtering it. Nobody's trying to direct you in one way or another. It's just you come in and you navigate the space as you see fit, and you talk to people you want to talk to. So, yeah, I think there have been so many reasons why these spaces have closed. I mean, in addition to the things we've mentioned, big box bookstores, the internet, Amazon, ebooks, all of that. Also assimilation. I mean, there are plenty of LGBTQ people who want just to be part of the mainstream. And I understand the desire to belong, but I think that is an unfortunate choice to not see what's special about us, to not connect to our history and say, no, we're not just like everybody else. If we were, we wouldn't have founded these spaces and organizations in the first place. The mainstream culture has defined us originally as a disease, as a pathology. And that history lingers on. It's not like that was, 1,000 years ago. That started over 100 years ago. And the pathologization, the criminalization of queer people, that continues, obviously, as we are seeing a resurgence of that today. So it's so important for us to have our own spaces where we're talking directly to each other, unmediated. It's not about some big corporation making money off of us. It's us with each other, and that's so important.
I want to say in general, too, to add that what we need to remember, those coming after us, those who've gone before us, and the generational baton passing, a lot of businesses have closed because the owners started them and did them their entire lives. And then after 40 years, you're ready to retire. You've done your service to the community. And so if it isn't a business model that can be sold to pass it on to another generation, it's not a business model that seems sustainable in the face of different industry dynamics, then like a bar or a bookstore or any store retail, if you will, business, it's inevitable that it will close. And I think that as the generation turned over, Giovanni's Room in Philadelphia, the bookstore in Boston, Oscar Wilde, these were generations that started these, community hubs for gathering and activism when we basically had no rights, and continued them because bookstores became the thing. And so I think that's another reason why some of our businesses are disappearing, or some of our spaces are disappearing, is because they've been supported and they need to be handed off. So we're asking younger generation to keep that in mind, to create your spaces, the work that is involved. And maybe if you want a space to stay alive, become more involved and see how you can carry it on when the time comes for the founders, if you will, for lack of better word, to say, I'm ready for the next life journey. I've done this, but we want to keep it going. So who's going to do that?
Obviously, something we haven't mentioned that is major is the AIDS pandemic.
Yeah.
That killed off so many customers, so many people who were participating in the culture, and then they were gone. They died. So that's really important to remember in the closing of queer spaces, is so many people died because of the AIDS pandemic, and that had just a major effect. How could it not?
Absolutely. And I think we see some of those dynamics repeat itself in the COVID-19 pandemic, which you had touched upon. While many establishments were impacted by it, the pandemic did have a disproportionate impact on the LGBTQ plus community. So how did you overcome this to provide a sense of community to queer people in a virtual setting?
Yeah, I mean, like everyone else, it just smacked us in the face. Nobody was ready for this. Nothing like this had ever happened to any of us. None of us were alive during the 1918 Spanish flu. So, yeah, that was a lot. But for us, at that point, the center wasn't charging us rent. The center charged us a low rent when we first moved in 2014. And then in 2018, they said, you know what? Just keep doing what you're doing. You don't need to pay us anything. We love what you're doing. Keep it up. So we didn't have to worry about that. So many businesses had to keep paying rent while they were not doing any business, which of course you can only do that so long unless you have a trust fund, which neither of us have. So we didn't have to pay rent. We did still have to pay insurance because we didn't know how long we were going to be closed. Nobody did. But that was our major expense. And suddenly we had a lot of time on our hands, or I did, because this has been my full-time non-paying job from the beginning. So, we were able to do a lot of online events. I did have someone help us start an online store. So, that made it possible for us to keep doing things, to stay connected to some degree at least. And yeah, not having to pay rent was major. We could just continue to exist online and not have to worry about that. So yeah, that was then we were very grateful for the tech, even though our main goal was about having a physical, real-time, real space connection. Here we were saying, oh, okay, well, now these tools are really useful. Let's use them. They're here. So yeah, that's how we made it through.
Yeah, and I think the silver lining in that moment was that it provided the opportunity to test and trial, connect to a global community, which has continued to this day. So if the event organizers want to live stream, we can do that. So audiences can dial in from anywhere to events if that's part of the experience. And then we also have this tremendous library of videos recorded from our events since we started doing that. So now, for longevity's purposes, our YouTube channel is a library of cultural events that if anybody wants to research and go back and look, they're there.
Yeah, we now say to anyone who's organizing an event with us, do you want to live stream it? And I would say 90% of them say yes. So yeah, we have this massive archive that really began during COVID of videos that are on our YouTube channel.
Yep.
So that was a nice thing that came out of the COVID period.
That's awesome to have that level of accessibility, even still post-COVID, just because geographical factors, it's, obviously cities are more liberal places, but right now we're seeing a lot of fear, a lot of division. So it's great that people who may not typically reside in those more accepting areas can still access these materials, these people, to kind of reaffirm their identity. And going off of that, unfortunately, we do have to kind of go into this little downer of a question. How has the current political climate affected queer spaces like the Bureau?
It's maddening. It's so frustrating to be where we are. It's insane. I can't believe we're here, and yet here we are. On the other hand, Donnie and I was born in 70. Donnie was born in 69. We grew up during the worst of the AIDS crisis. We were in high school, so we were just kind of coming into figuring out. Donnie, it was a little easier. I was raised by evangelical Christians, so that did a number on me. But yeah, we were growing up in a very hostile environment just because the AIDS crisis was so focused on gay men. Of course, also intravenous drug users, originally also a focus on Haiti, people from Haiti, but predominantly in the public imagination, it was gay men. And so we were already a kind of despised minority, and now it was just like on steroids. So as we consider this moment, we remember, okay, we've been through some pretty tough shit. Not just us personally, but us as a community. And then if you look before the gay liberation movement, I mean, the 50s and 60s, going back further and further, there's a lot of very horrific things that we've made it through. So we try and keep that in mind. Like, this isn't the first time. This is not new. We've made it through before, and not to minimize what's happening. It's real. It's awful, but let's keep some perspective is what we tell ourselves and what we tell others. And also we remind each other, like, we don't have to think about the orange clown every day. I hate to even bring it up. I never say its name, but I remind people, like, we can talk about other things. It's not that we're denying the reality that's happening, but we need breaks. We need pleasure. We need joy. We need to fight the good fight. And then we need to have some fun. And we need to remind ourselves that this isn't everything, that this too shall pass. And give each other strength and find pleasure wherever we can and grab it and cherish it. I feel like that's something we've learned from those who've come before us. I mean, people fighting during the AIDS crisis, many people didn't know if they would live another year. And they were busy as activists, but they also partied. They would go from being activists in the street to going to a dance party at night. And so I feel like that's such an important legacy that we've learned from is you got to have joy. You got to laugh. You got to not let this take over your mind space. Don't let them, take over your mind.
Definitely. And kind of segueing out of that to try to leave us on a more positive note, what have been some of your favorite moments or event at the Bureau that give you hope for the future?
I mean, one of my favorite moments was when we were still at Strange Loop. Someone approached us about doing a film series, and this guy who we didn't know at all connected us with some really great people, and one of whom was Genesis Breyer Peorage. I don't know if you know Genesis. They died a few years ago. They were in a band, a noise industrial band in Britain called Throbbing Bristle. So they're kind of a countercultural hero. And they came and introduced a film by Derek Jarman. Derek Jarman, the incredible gay filmmaker from Britain, made such films as Edward II. Genesis introduced the film Sebastian, which, if you haven't seen it, I totally recommend it. That came out, was that the 70s or might have been early 80s? I need to look that up. Anyway, it's a crazy film about Saint Sebastian. And having Genesis, who knew Derek Jarman did die of AIDS during the pandemic. But having Genesis, this total countercultural icon, introduce the film, and Genesis knew Derek Jarman, I mean, that was just amazing. That was such a cool moment.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about, well, a big moment for us, besides what Greg has already shared. I already mentioned everything at Strange Loop Gallery. That was continual future vision, hope, fun, community. In our current space, artist Liz Collins, did this massive installation, cast of characters, beautiful exhibition, carpeted wallpaper, brought in some furniture, over 100 artists, phenomenal summer show, a lot of press and attention, but it was just beautiful and it was fun. It was playful.
Yeah.
And so that to me, those are my favorite moments. When we started in the space, our opening event we hosted the artist Geo Black Peter. And surprise, surprise, Geo Black Peter had part of his performance at the front of the room where two participants pissed on him
while he was reading
a poem. And we didn't know that was going to happen, I don't think. And it was just like, oh yeah. So it's moments of surprise like that are, for me, keep me going, give me hope, show me the creativity and the vision, and that remind me that we do not have to be part of this system. We can create our own channels and avenues for expression and gathering. We don't need permission. We never have. And to go back to Greg's point, I grew up in the South. I grew up in New Orleans. My incredible family. I had a different upbringing. Didn't have internet, didn't have social media, didn't have mobile devices, didn't have a way. It was bars and bookstores and spaces and gathering with your friends to find other people. It was so random. And that's the thing, is the randomness that,
gives you opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then the other thing I would say is that, Homo Cats, if you don't know Homo Cats, Jay Morrison, look him up on Instagram.
Brooklyn-based artist who we've known pretty much from the beginning.
Yeah, playful political activist messages with cat imagery. Phenomenal work. He is going to be our next exhibition in the space. And every time we've ever engaged in anything with him, it's always just fun. And it's also serious, and it's activism.
Yeah.
But you've got to keep that element of passion going, and remind yourself to find your points of connection. So to anyone out there, like, I grew up in the South, if you feel like you don't have a connection, if you feel like you can't express yourself truly right now because of what's happening in the world around you or in this country, you've got to remember that at some point you will be able to go and do what you want to do. It just may not be right now. I mean, that's something we had to live with in the 80s into the 90s, of like, I may not be doing what I want to do right now because of limitations, but at some point I will be able to do it. I just have to find that.
And what words of encouragement do you have for anyone struggling to find their community within the LGBTQ plus community?
This can be really tough. I know from personal experience, when I finally said I was done with the Christian upbringing I had, that really taught me to hate myself. When I got rid of that, I thought like, oh, I'm free. And then I realized like, okay, but I still have the scars, and it's not so easy for me to connect. When you've faced that kind of rejection from your own parents and the communities you grow up in, it's really hard to trust people after that. You're really wounded and scarred. So I know that's hardly unique to me. That's something that so many people experience. So the main thing I like to say to people is, be kind to yourself and give yourself space and time. You don't have to figure everything out right now. That's something I really am happy to see developing with younger generations, is that there's not one way to be gay. In many ways I felt like, oh, that's the way to be gay and I'm not good at it. So I'm not, I'm an outcast again. I'm not only am I an outcast from the main world, the straight world, but I'm also an outcast from the gay world. So I'm happy to see now it feels like there's so many more options, that kids can say they're queer, and that can mean so many different things. They don't have to, know exactly where they're going or what their identity means. There's more openness in space, and I think that's a wonderful thing. But the main thing I would say to people who are looking for community and connection is ask yourself what gives you joy, what gives you pleasure. Find groups that are related to those activities, so you're connecting with people on a level that you feel excitement and passion about already, and where you're not just focused on, am I going to find a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a lover, or, you're doing bird watching or whatever it is that you are excited about. So I think that's really important.
And connecting it back to the tarot, the King of Cups, again, this card is the perfect balance between head and heart. We let ourselves feel the feelings, we know how to process them, and we know how to turn them into strategic action forward so we can achieve our goals and engage those along the way. And I think the work Greg and Donnie are doing is the perfect example of that. They have talked about the origins of the Bureau and how it's gone from a pop-up location to the community hub it is today. They noticed a gap in the sense of community building with a lack of a local queer bookstore. And instead of ruminating on the doom and gloom over that, they instead took their passions and turned that into a full-fledged business that is giving back to the LGBTQ+ community all these years later. And even throughout major challenges like the COVID-19 pandemic, they did not let their fear or worry get the best of them. Instead, they turned it into inspired action and found ways to create online events and conversations so that way they could engage members of the community during that time of isolation and even past the pandemic. For those who may not live in cities and may feel isolated just by where their geographical region is, they can still access the resources and support they need through a virtual setting. And beyond Greg and Donnie just achieving their dreams and their goals through this, they've also engaged the community and given back in such a major way throughout their careers. And I think it really is a testament for ourselves that as we're looking at the current political climate, there is a lot of fear and there is a lot of concern and worry. And we definitely need to let ourselves feel that and give ourselves time to process that and grieve those losses. But at the end of the day, we can't let that grief consume us forever. Like Greg said, we do still need to make time to find joy, whether that's in a personal way or something larger that gives back to the LGBTQ+ community. So take some time to make sure that your head and heart are balanced as we move forward in life, whether it's our day-to-day lives, our relationships, our career pursuits, or even our advocacy work. Because whenever we take strategic action and allow ourselves to feel queer joy, that's a win for our community and a major way to give back to others during this difficult time. Well, Greg, Donnie, thank you so much for coming on today. This was a great episode. Can you tell the listeners where they can learn more about you and also support the Bureau?
Yeah, you can go to our website, which is bgsqd.com. Those 5 letters, our name, Bureau of General Services Queer Division. So bgsqd.com, on Instagram at bgsqd. And if you go to our website, bgsqd.com, you can see about upcoming events. You can see how to donate and support us. There's a lot to take in there. And then our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@BGSQD. You can see all those past videos. We mentioned that huge archive of past events.
Yeah, and I think I want to close with, you have to participate in some way, whether that is coming into the space, you purchase a zine or a book, or donating if you can, when you can. So we just want to remind everyone that participation is needed to keep something alive and driving that home. So one of the current effects is funding through the federal administration is having a downstream effect for all organizations, including us. So we really want to drive home the point. If you want to support us, you can't be here locally for whatever reason, and you can give through Fractured Atlas to the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, and it is tax deductible. So that we have nonprofit sponsorship through Fractured Atlas.
And all that's on the website. If you go to the menu on the website, you can click on donate and you'll see how you can sign up to become a monthly donor, which would be the best option because that gives us continual support, even if it's $5 a month, $10 a month. But you can also make a one-time donation there.
Yep.
So there are lots of ways to support us. And we hope, we want to pass this project on to a younger generation so that it continues beyond us.
And all that information will be in the show notes, so definitely check it out after you're done listening. And for the podcast, you know the drill. Any questions or feedback, you can reach out to me, rob@ajadedgay.com. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. 5 stars only. I greatly appreciate it. For more information on this topic, guests, episode resources, blog posts, merchandise, socials, all that fun stuff, you can visit the website, ajadedgay.com. You can connect with the podcast on Instagram, TikTok, SoundCloud, and YouTube @ajadedgaypod. You can follow me personally, Rob Loveless, on Instagram @Rob_Loveless. Also, if you're feeling generous, consider supporting the podcast on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. That gets you instant access to episodes ad-free, a day early, plus exclusive monthly bonus content. Or if you just want to access the monthly bonus episodes, you can purchase them for $3 each. And if you're scared of commitment, don't worry, I get it. You can make a one-time donation on Buy Me a Coffee for any dollar amount, and both the Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee are at A Jaded Gay Pod. And remember, every day is all we have, so you gotta make your own happiness. Bye!